Hey there, everybody. This is Andre, the Game I Dig. I just wanted to do a real quick run-through discussion for people's inability to either, one, think critically, their lack of reading comprehension skills, and general lack of knowledge. Now, last week we got that whole thing about Nintendo having layoffs. I would love to know how you lay people off that don't work for you. Because it's weird to label something in a way that doesn't actually describe what that thing actually is. So, in truth, Nintendo had a bunch of contractors doing work for them through a firm that gave them those workers temporarily. Chances are it was so that they could start pumping stuff out. They had to get stuff finished up, and they needed people, extra hands, to get things done. So when work wound down, Nintendo went ahead and twilighted the contract that they had with the agency that gave them the workers, their contractors. And likely because the contract was ended early, Nintendo had to make extra payment for that remaining time, which would technically be a severance. Because through no fault of the workers or the agency, the contract had to be ended early. Simple as that. That's it. There's not a whole lot of stuff that really needs to go into this. And I have experience with this because I worked as a contracted security guard. So I have at least a foot in the door to understand that. I worked for an agency that stationed security guards throughout the New England area when I lived there. And one of the places that they stationed security guards or security officers, however you want to say it, this place, I don't want to say too much about it because technically I'm still not allowed to, but this place had direct contact with a lot of government agencies. And my job was to help secure and maintain the security of this particular place. I was contracted from a local security firm to that place. I didn't go there and get a job as one of their direct security officers because they were short-staffed at the time. So the place that I got hired through sent me there, and they paid that company as my employer, and my employer paid me for being there because I had a whole different clock in, clock out than the people that worked there, like that were hired directly through that particular place. My clock in, clock out was done through a phone system, and they had also a way to track you through GPS based on where you were calling from. So I could have been hired on directly as a security officer for that company. Actually, if I would have still been up there, more than likely I would have been. They would have probably taken me on directly because they were looking to do that with that company. They had done it before with several other people that had worked for that company. And if I was still there, more than likely I would have been onboarded and probably be a night supervisor right now if I was still with them. Personal situation changed, so I had to leave and come down here. But that's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. But point is, if they would have canceled the contract with the company I worked for, all that would have happened is they would have stationed me somewhere else. I would have had to have gone back to them and they would have stationed me at a different place. And because I was supposed to be there for the foreseeable future, or at least until their contract ran out, which I don't know how long their contract was, I would have received a bonus for being there up until that contract ended, if I would have stayed with that company. So I would have gotten a little bit extra given for the inconvenience of having to find a new work routine and be placed somewhere else. But I would have still been employed with the company I worked for. So when Nintendo says, hey, we're letting go of all these people because we don't need them anymore, basically, they're freeing them up to go work somewhere else. It's not the same situation if they were direct employees of Nintendo and Nintendo said, oh shoot, we gotta fire you guys. That's a whole different thing. These people were sent back to the company they actually work for to get new assignments. At least the ones that didn't get hired directly on through Nintendo. Because yeah, Nintendo did hire on people. They hired, I have no idea how many people from that temp firm to work directly for them. Brought them on as their own full-time employees. Benefits packages and everything. And the other relatively about 100 people went back to the firm they were working for to find new assignments. That was it. Not this grand spectacle that it was being made out to be, because Nintendo is in the middle of reorganizing. And they're reorganizing because they're expanding, meaning they actually do need more people than what they already had working directly for them. They just didn't need everyone that came from that agency. That's how contracts work for people who are considered to be contractors. That's it. It's not like these people were independent contractors, because that's not what they were. And I gotta thank someone for being disingenuous for this example. And that's because WWE considers their wrestlers contractors. Here's the problem. They're contractors because of how much it would cost to pay their taxes. And the company doesn't want to do that. Because WWE owns a firm that creates and sets up the contracts for their wrestlers. Very similar to what the NBA the NFL, the NHL, MLS all do. They have a separate firm that is still technically owned by the company that works out the contracts and deals and negotiations and then sends them back so that they can work for the company. So yes, while WWE wrestlers are not called employees, they're still employees of the WWE. Otherwise, they would own their likenesses, their gimmicks, the character profiles and ideas that they come up with for their characters and representations of those characters as wrestlers. But they don't. WWE Entertainment, that's redundant. WWE owns it. They own them unless they either generous enough to give it to a particular wrestler because of how iconic they are, or it's bought from them. Those are the only two times that change. Now, things that they can't really lay claim to in particular are people's names. Like if it's the wrestler's actual name, they can't lay claim to it. But if it's something that they made up, like Gold Dust, yeah, they own the rights to that character and the imagery from that character. That's it. So, for example, when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash left the WWF at the time to go wrestle for WCW, they couldn't take the stage names and gimmicks that they had with them. They had to change the names of what they did. They had to go by different names in WCW than what they would have been able to do in WWE or WWF again. And also due to this change, the WWF came up with, tried to throw the whole Razor Ramon and big sexy character personalities on other people. One of those people went on to become Kane. The other wrestler, I don't remember exactly what his next shtick was. But those gimmicks were owned by WWF because of the contracts. Even though the physical people could leave the contracts and move on and do other things, the characters that they had created and become couldn't. Now, it didn't mean that they couldn't do similar gimmicks once they moved over to WCW at the time, but it also did mean that they just couldn't use those stage names per se, or the names, again, of their different moves and everything that they came up with, and even had to change some things to not be able to be sued by WWF at the time for stealing their IP, technically. And I say this to say all that to say that WWE wrestlers are employees because they literally don't own any of the characters that they portray. No matter how big and famous they get, unless they are given or purchase the rights to be that outside of being in the ring as part of WWE, it doesn't make much of a difference because they could be sued. Again, yeah, there are some special circumstances, but for the most part, that's how it works. An employee of a company, when they work on something for a company, the company owns that thing they work on, unless otherwise specifically stated. Now, I believe a better example would have been to utilize mangaka. mangaka. I said it with an N there. No, but mangaka technically are contractors. They are independent contractors because they can, in most circumstances, own part of the property that they work on. So they are a separate entity from the likes of Shueisha or Shonen Jump. But they are independent contractors, not contractors. And the independent there is a significant piece. It means you are under your own employ, not someone else's. You can work with a company and not for a company, like Akira Toriyama did up until his recent passing. So that's the major difference maker. Now, I could have run through this ranting and raving, and I almost did. But then I realized sometimes explaining things for people because they just really truly don't know is better than yelling and screaming at them about it. Even though I personally feel, especially if you research these things a lot, you should know this. But that doesn't necessarily mean that someone will. So hopefully me explaining this way and more people will hear it, and then they'll be like, oh, so that's why it's not the same thing. But then you'll also have the people like, oh no, it's Nintendo fanboys. It's okay. It's okay. Nintendo did it too. Even if we were to say that that was what Nintendo did, if I humor it, if we were to say that's what Nintendo did, do you mean to tell me that their layoffs are significantly less than companies that are more major than them, that have technically more money than them? Well, not Sony per se, but companies that are bigger and able to afford more can't keep their employees on for longer term. They can't keep their teams together for longer term, but Nintendo only loses about 100. At that point, that's just normal workplace cuts. That's not really a major set. It's not a massive layoff. And when I made the original comment, somebody said something along the lines of it being 1,000 people, and I'm like, where did you get that 1,000? Because everything I saw said 100. And I checked multiple different things. So I was like, everything I saw said 100. I don't know where you got 1,000. So either you misread, which is potential chance that happens. I mean, it's 1000 and 100. Like, you could accidentally add a zero. Either that, or if we were taking the most generous approach, Nintendo had 1,000 contractors with them. And out of that 1,000, only 100 didn't become directly employed to Nintendo. So they had a 90% intake. If we were giving this the most generous look. And that's only based on if that's what the person was saying when they were talking about 1,000, and it wasn't just a mistake. Like they saw the number 100 and somehow mistook it for 1,000. So, again, that's if that's the case. I don't know how many people were working as contractors through whatever agencies for Nintendo. And I'm not going to pretend to know. Again, that was just me just messing around with that more than likely mistake. So, with all of that said, with all of that thought out, could people please just be a little bit more genuine with their arguments? and not avoid direct follow-ups that knock down your arguments. Like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. So that's why I felt the need to go ahead and do this discussion. I mean, there are several others that I know I need to do, and I'm going to go ahead and get those out the way, because I think I'm going to be trying to pump out more content, and I want to get more ideas out for you guys. So, but that needed a genuine explanation. Now, if I'm wrong somewhere, anyone who does contract work, please correct me on this. Maybe there's something slightly different when it comes down to the field of technology, but in a general sense, I think I'm right. But if I am wrong, I implore whoever is listening that may know, please correct me. Please correct me. But if I'm not wrong, then it makes me wonder how some people don't understand that themselves. Or if maybe they liked using it as a moment to drum up some drama, to get some interactions, and that was that. But otherwise, thank you guys very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out, everybody. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy, and I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. If you would be interested in supporting my efforts in content creation, please head on over to Amazon and look up The Game Idea Guy Presents Gaming Word Search, and you will find both Volume 1 and Volume 2 up for sale. Thank you very much once again, and I hope to be able to create more content for you in the future. Peace out.